Tonight, Israeli troops accused of opening fire on Palestinians desperately seeking food aid. Also tonight, the Dunstan by-election battle gets personal as Labor and the Liberals attack each other's candidates. Unfriended, Facebook owner Meta pulls the plug on commercial deals with Australian media companies. Adelaide United goalkeeper Grace Wilson becomes the first Australian professional soccer player to come out as non-binary. And wickets tumble in Wellington as Australia takes the lead on day 2 of the first test with New Zealand. Good evening, Richard Davies with ABC News. Israeli soldiers are being accused of firing on people as a convoy of aid trucks passed a checkpoint west of Gaza City, leaving hundreds of Palestinians killed and wounded. Gaza's health ministry says the people were waiting to receive food. Israeli officials acknowledge their troops opened fire but say many were trampled. US President Joe Biden says the incident could derail peace talks. A warning Middle East correspondent Alison Horn's report contains confronting images.
The aftermath of the latest bloody chapter in this conflict. These men, women and children hurt or killed while trying to get desperately needed food. What should have been a moment of hope, the delivery of aid to a section of northern Gaza facing famine and starvation, turning deadly. Israel has released this vision, it says, shows crowds swarming the aid trucks. Palestinian health officials say Israeli troops opened fire on the waiting crowd, killing more than 100 and injuring more than 700.
Our children went to get a bag of flour to feed their families, and they ran over our children and shot them.
Israel's military says its troops were there securing the passage of the convoy and claims the crowds approached their forces in a manner that posed a threat to the troops, who responded with live fire. IDF spokesman Rear Admiral Daniel Hagari says dozens of Gazans were killed and injured from pushing, trampling and being run over by the trucks.
The tanks that were there to secure the convoy sees the Gazans being trampled and cautiously tries to disperse the mob with a few warning shots.
The UN says it's been unable to deliver food regularly and safely to northern Gaza for more than 5 weeks. Hamas says this incident could derail negotiations for a deal on a temporary ceasefire in exchange for the release of hostages. Before the war, Ibrahim Ahmed used to build houses. Now he digs graves, 30 to 40 each day, he says. The sound of Israeli drones, a constant companion.
As a human being with feelings, it feels sad to go from building villas and buildings, which I love, to digging and making graves.
A moment of tenderness for the dead in a war marked by brutality for those living through it. Alison Horn, ABC News, Jerusalem.
The by-election battle in Dunstan has escalated, with both major parties trading blows over their candidates. Less than a month from polling day, Labor has accused the Liberals candidate, Anna Finizio, of not being transparent about her past, while the Liberals claim Labor's nominee, Cressida O'Hanlon, has unanswered questions about her conduct.
United Front. Senior Liberals flank Anna Finizio following days of attacks by political opponents. The latest, she applied for a job in 2020 with then Labor Shadow Attorney General Kayam Ma.
This wasn't a job where you're applying to work in the public sector to write policy for the government of the day, no matter who it is. This is a partisan job.
Ms Finizio says she wasn't a Liberal Party member at the time.
So this is a policy and research role. I was the policy lawyer for the Law Society of South Australia.
David Spears only found out about it on Thursday.
I've got no issue with the nature of the job.
Ms Finizio's resume and application for the position have been leaked to the media. Minister Tom Koutsantonis denies there's a breach of privacy laws.
The Labor Party makes no apology for this whatsoever, zero, because it's in the public interest that this be out.
On Wednesday, Labor drew attention to Ms Finicio's directorship of a family company. It collapsed 2 years after she left the post, owing the tax office more than $4 million. She denies wrongdoing, but neither she nor Mr Spears would say if either of the issues were formally declared when she nominated for Dunstan.
I'm not going to comment on the vetting process.
We can't discuss the statutory declaration in the CR. We cannot discuss the CRC process.
While the opposition has been trying its own attacks on Labor's candidate Cressida O'Hanlon. It questions if integrity standards were breached by an email from her husband while she worked as a political staffer.
They are very directly linked to rules within the Parliament.
How does an email between a husband and wife get out?
The Liberals won't say. The Dunstan campaign still has 3 weeks to run. Rory McLaren, ABC News.
Victoria Police have denied that racial profiling was behind the wrongful arrest of a former immigration detainee in Melbourne yesterday. While advocates are calling for an independent review into the case of mistaken identity, a number of federal Liberals who were quick to raise the issue are holding their ground.
A former immigration detainee was arrested and charged following an alleged sexual assault on this Melbourne street. But last night it was revealed the 44-year-old man had been wrongly accused. Electronic monitoring data put the former detainee in the wrong place at the wrong time. But police said he also looked like the actual alleged offender, pictured, who's now been arrested. Police said they were about the same age, height and ethnicity.
Sounds a lot like racial profiling.
Not at all. Based on the descriptions and the evidence we had at that time, there was grounds for the arrest. They looked very much alike.
It is an example of racial profiling and even more specifically, the political profiling of a very tiny subset of the population.
It's lazy policing, it's inappropriate, it is racial profiling.
Advocates want an independent review and for politicians to stop weaponising it, as in question time yesterday. Despite the mistake, the Deputy Liberal leader refused to delete this tweet, linking what she called foreign criminals to the upcoming by-election in the southeast Melbourne seat of Dunkley.
I think it's entirely reasonable that you would make that the points that we made yesterday. And I guess the general point that we were making is that the Albanese government's released 149 people, hardened criminals, from immigration detention.
Being wrongly charged and wrongly named and shamed by the police and named in federal parliament by bad faith actors. It is absolutely appalling.
The police and authorities should be allowed to do their job free of this preemptive political game playing.
Politics never far from immigration. Kate Ashton, ABC News, Melbourne.
Survivors of the 2019 White Island disaster and families of the victims have been awarded nearly $10 million as part of a long-running prosecution of tourism operators in New Zealand. 6 guilty parties were sentenced today, with the largest fine being handed to the management company held by the Buttle family who own the volcano. It's been ordered to pay nearly $1 million as a penalty for breaching workplace health and safety laws, as well as nearly half of the total reparation figure. The judge said although the company had no funds, there was a moral obligation to pay.
There is nothing to stop the Buttles, as WML's shareholders, from advancing the necessary funds to cover that obligation. We wait to see what the Buttles will do. The world is watching.
The company that owns Facebook says it will stop paying Australian media for news content when their current deals expire. The tech giant Meta has paid millions to Australian media companies, including the ABC. The government slammed the move, but Meta says its customers don't come to its platform for news and political content.
The fight between the Australian media and tech giants is rebooting. Now Facebook's owner Meta is no longer willing to pay for news.
We're not talking about some plucky little startup here. We're talking about one of the world's largest and most profitable companies.
Selfish, derelict and destructive. Few Australian leaders had anything kind to say about the company today.
The government takes the view that this is a dereliction of its responsibility to Australia.
Meta has decided not to renew a deal it struck 3 years ago. Back then, the government passed laws forcing big tech to pay for the use of news. But today, in a statement, Meta said people don't come to Facebook for news and political content. The decision could cost news outlets millions.
And even though we know that these commercial deals are confidential, we are aware of reports that it's some $200 million that will be impacted here.
There are even concerns it might switch off the lights for some smaller players.
For some, it could be fatal that they lose this access to money.
Former ACCC chairman Rod Sims helped negotiate the code 3 years ago.
I think this is a very selfish decision by Meta and Facebook. It means that they're not willing to pay for content that they benefit from.
We need the federal government not to blink here. The very reason this code came into being was to ensure that the digital giants paid their way.
The government has signalled it's unwilling to let this slide.
Nobody should be under any doubt about the government's resolve to ensure that we have a viable media industry in this country.
It's seeking advice on its next steps, which could include compelling Facebook to the bargaining table. Ange Lavoie-Pierre, ABC News.
In the wake of a recent massacre that killed 70 people in Papua New Guinea's highlands, attention has turned to the firearms used by villagers. Analysis of videos posted to social media reveals most of the weapons were Australian and American manufactured assault rifles. They were sold to PNG's Defence Force decades ago, and a warning some images in this story may be confronting.
On the way to attack their enemy, men from 3 allied tribes were ambushed. 2 weeks on from this horrific massacre, the death toll continues to climb as bodies are found in nearby rivers and bush, and others die from their injuries. Videos taken in the lead up to the violence reveal clear warning signs and the considerable firepower carried by these tribesmen. Here in January, the Amberlin tribe march in a show of force. At the front, about 9 assault rifles, mainly M16s or AR-15s, American guns that would have been sold to PNG's Defence Forces decades ago.
Guns are not being brought into Papua New Guinea by, evil foreigners. In fact, they're leaking out from state stocks. They're leaking out from the police and the army.
Like this one, the Australian SLR. Thousands were made for PNG's Defence Force before winding up in the highlands.
They're the most popular assault rifle in Papua New Guinea. They're very, very popular with mercenaries because they have good long range, they're very accurate, and they've got a heavy bullet. Which makes them lethal at a much longer distance.
This bullpup firearm, a more modern weapon, is designed for urban combat. Bullets sprayed into the air indicate ammunition is also in far greater supply than decades ago. Police sources say they most likely originate from state supplies.
These guns have what we call a long decay curve. They have a long life. If you look after them, they can still be working 100 years from now. And so as long as you can get the ammunition for them, they will remain lethal.
Recent massacres would not be possible without these guns and ammunition, which are allegedly bought and supplied by wealthy tribal leaders, financiers who police will now target in a bid to curb the ongoing bloodshed. Tim Swanston, ABC News, Port Moresby.
A sinkhole has opened up at an industrial site in Sydney South, causing a partial building collapse. Emergency services were called to West Botany Street in Rockdale following reports a large area of ground had fallen away. No one was injured. The sinkhole opened directly above the construction of the new M6 tunnel, damaging an industrial building. Transport for New South Wales says workers inside the tunnel noticed the roof beginning to sink. The sorrow in Sydney's queer community is affecting the tone of this year's Mardi Gras. One night out from the big parade, participants are trying to strike the right balance between commemoration and celebration.
Jessie and Luke were planning to enjoy the colour and celebration of Sydney's Mardi Gras parade on Saturday night. but they'll never get that chance. As final preparations for the event take place, the loss of the two young men looms large for the queer community.
A lot of people in mourning. I have close friends who are close to the couple. It's been a really difficult festival.
I know the community is hurting, and I sincerely hope tomorrow night provides a safe environment to come together, to grieve together.
Some called for police to be banned from marching in the parade after a New South Wales police constable was charged with the murder of Jesse and Luke. Mardi Gras executives uninvited the force before backflipping, saying police could march but not in uniform.
We understand that there is a lot of opinions in community about this that range from one end of the spectrum to the other.
While tinged with sadness this year, Mardi Gras will still be a celebration of all things queer.
Happy Mardi Gras!
Look, it's the most amazing experience. The marshalling area is just full of so much love and joy.
On the back of the hit Barbie film, we decided to do lesbian Barbie, so we came up with Lesbi.
Come on, Barbie, let's go party!
This year's parade won't see the same mammoth turnout it had in 2023, when Sydney World Pride coincided with Mardi Gras. But it will still pull in big crowds. Around 250,000 people are expected to come here to Oxford Street to watch the march.
Many of the 200 floats in the parade will be advocating for important causes.
So let's get loud for our homeless.
A community marching together as they mourn those they've lost. Helena Burke, ABC News, Sydney.
Recently capped young Matilda, Grace Wilson, has become the first Australian professional soccer player to come out as non-binary. The Adelaide United goalkeeper hopes it'll make it easier for other athletes grappling with their gender identity in a sporting world where queerphobia is still a pressing issue.
Taking a leap, that 18-year-old goalie Grace Wilson hopes will create change.
By coming out, it's just being able to be honest with everyone around me. And for the last year and a bit, I haven't been, and it's really difficult to kind of navigate.
The young Adelaide United goalkeeper is now the first professional soccer player in the country to come out as non-binary. They're making strides as they gear up for the Asian Cup in Uzbekistan after being named in the Young Matildas squad last month. Wilson was signed by United in 2022 and has played for the Young and Junior Matildas before. Despite support from their club and team, Wilson knows there's still a long way to go.
I faced, some homophobia within, teams because I was one of the first openly queer people on my teams.
It's an all too common hurdle for many queer sports people. Adelaide United midfielder Josh Cavallo made global headlines in 2021 for being the first professional male footballer to come out as gay. Since then, he's called out homophobic abuse on the ground and online.
A 2019 Flinders University study found almost 40% of respondents felt unsafe or vulnerable in a sporting environment because of their gender identity or sexuality. It also found feelings of intimidation eased once the athlete had spent time with the club.
It's just about a mutual respect and engaging in conversation. So for me, that's the most important thing.
Wilson hopes awareness and education will give other queer and gender diverse athletes an easier run.
I just hope that through me coming out, it's something for myself, but also something for other people who, may be considering their gender.
Keeping strong to give others a shot. Anisha Pilarisetti, ABC News.
It's a tough time for many at the moment, with higher interest rates and cost of living pressures squeezing household budgets. But despite that, the latest data shows house prices are still rising, bouncing back from what looked like the start of a downturn late last year.
On a hot day, this family's coming to inspect what some real estate agents might call a renovator's delight.
It needs work, as you'd expect. We knew that coming in. For us, we need to be able to live in a place as we fix it up with the two little kids.
But agent Luke Secco is confident the corner house in Australia's second biggest market will be hot property when it goes under the hammer.
With the talk of rates coming off or dropping, we're finding that there's more buyers out there and the market's picking up.
Figures from CoreLogic show prices rose nationally by 0.6% in February and nearly 9% over the year. Perth led the monthly gains, followed by Adelaide, Brisbane, Canberra, the regions, Sydney, Melbourne and Darwin, while Hobart went backwards. Rents also had the strongest monthly rise since March last year, up 0.9%. The results are surprising to some due to the current state of the economy, with rising unemployment, higher interest rates and cost of living pressures squeezing household budgets.
It looks like the housing market has actually avoided a cyclical downswing. That's where it looked like the market was going at the end of last year.
Economists say prospective buyers are optimistic about the potential for an interest rate cut later this year. And house prices are holding up because not enough properties are up for sale. Some predictions are that house prices might continue to rise this year. Does that factor into any decision making?
Yeah, you always worry about the ladder being pulled up and never being able to get on.
A hope shared by many reaching for the Australian dream. Nadia Daly, ABC News.
And turning to finance, and the local share market has climbed to its highest level ever, alongside property prices. Here's David Chow.
13 rate hikes from the Reserve Bank have barely put a dent in house prices. Now they're starting to rise again more quickly. On growing speculation, there'll be rate cuts. And the numbers are eye-watering when you consider how much prices have gone up since the dark days of COVID, especially in Brisbane, Adelaide and Perth, where prices have hit record highs. Now here's how much prices have risen in dollar terms. In 4 years, most cities have risen by around $200,000 to $300,000, which widens the gap between the haves and the have-nots. And demand from foreign buyers has hit its highest level in 6 years. But keep in mind, they've bought up 10% of new properties and just 4% of existing housing. So most of the competition, by far, is domestic. Meanwhile, it was a decent day for the share market, which rose 0.6% to finish at a record high. And it's up 1.4% over the week on bets that a rate cut might happen sooner rather than later. Today, shares of Life 360 surged 38.5%. It's a company with an app to help parents track the live location of their children. And it reported a full year loss of $28 million, which is a huge improvement compared to last year. Lithium stocks did well, but healthcare companies were the worst performers. And there was a lot of enthusiasm overseas, with markets in Japan and the US also hitting record highs, while gold is at its highest level in a month, and the Aussie dollar is buying just over 65 US cents. And that's finance.
4 months after Australians voted against enshrining a voice to Parliament in the Constitution, South Australian First Nations people are gearing up for the country's first state-based voice elections. More than 100 people have nominated to fill 46 seats on 6 local voices, with 2 representatives from each region to form the state voice. First Nations Voice Commissioner Dale Aegis has spent the past 18 months consulting with Aboriginal people about the process. He joined reporter Stephanie Richards to discuss the upcoming elections and hopes for the future.
Dale Aegis, thanks for joining me. Has delivering a South Australian First Nations voice to Parliament been harder than you thought?
It's been a journey, if that. Taking on the role originally with the idea of doing a state parliament was very exciting, and a great opportunity and an honour to do such a state reform. Coming out from where I've come from 18 months ago to where it is now, a lot of learnings, a lot of conversations, both with community, with government, and also with the broader public. Coming out where we are now and where we've landed with a number of nominees, all in all worthwhile.
Do you think the South Australian public still backs a state-based voice given that referendum result in October? I
think what needs to happen is there needs to be a bit more clarity around the difference between the referendum point and the state legislation point. One being, of course, the first and foremost being the referendum being enshrined in the Australian Constitution. We're not intending to do that here in South Australia. It's legislated through the state government, passing a bill through Parliament. I think there needs a bit more messaging, particularly from the model and the regions, in terms of how that all works in practice. I think once the broader South Australian public understand that we're only asking for a seat at the table to have our issues heard with decision makers, nothing more, nothing less. I think if that's more grasped and more presented across more widely and people understand that, they'll be more receptive to accept it. because the situation that Aboriginal people find themselves in for quite some time is probably a bit unacceptable. And if we keep going down the path we're going, we're going to get nowhere. And we have to try something different, which is what our state leaders have said to try something different, to get a model, to get our voices within the decision makers, to try and give them some guided advice, particularly around some decisions which impact our affairs, and help them come to good possible solutions, good responsible government decision making, accountability and transparency.
Looking at the nominations, it appears there's a lot more people that have put their hand up to run in Adelaide compared to each of the regions. What does that say to you about the divide between metropolitan and regional First Nations communities in SA?
I guess what I've learned out of the engagements rounds is that our communities feel extremely dislocated from engaging in the processes, and they feel like they need something to help coordinate and structure the way they do their business in all the regions. I guess the biggest difference we have in terms of the regions and the metropolitan area is the population base. Right, so within all the regions, the numbers sit around 3,000 to 4,000 Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander people, so they've got 7 representatives. Within the central zone, there's around 12 to 14,000 Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander people, so they've got up to 11 representatives. So in terms of how we try to balance it out is understanding the issues that has been raised through the community consultations, but also then the population within those regions, to give a bit of equity and balance across the representatives in each region.
When you've been out to the regions, have you come across any perceptions about what the voice would look like in terms of whether it's something just for city folk as opposed to people in the regions?
When we're able to sit down and talk to people and they understand that they've got their regions as their own voice body, they're relieved and pleased that they can actually take up their own business and their own issues within their own regions and think of regional approaches. What we strongly heard was, that Aboriginal communities have commonalities that they face within the regions, and they want to support each other and work together. And they can only do that by a regional approach. That's what we've designed in the model. So how they come together to work that out is entirely up to them. The representatives that are elected through the elections are able to determine their priorities within their regions and then take that up and escalate up to the state if they need to.
When will we know if the First Nations voice to Parliament has improved the lives of First Nations people?
Yeah, big question. And I guess, that the voice isn't the silver bullet, isn't the all answer to all of the issues that Aboriginal people are facing, particularly in the regions and metropolitanly. What this is just an approach to get those issues to be heard in a more public space.
But do you have specific metrics that you're looking at to measure the success of the voice at improving those lives of First Nations people?
No, I think the metrics all sit within the Closing the Gap reform. So those metrics that have key indicators in terms of the social, equity of Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander people within our state. We know that there's overrepresentation in incarceration, overrepresentation with child removal, school attendance, job opportunities, engagement with the community control sector, and service delivery, reforms which need to have input by representatives to really hit the mark. What we know is some of the designs of the programs are all well and good and well-meaning and well-intended, but they're not actually hitting the ground in response to what the community actually requires and needs. And you can only get that by engaging the people that engage in those programs and those deliveries, and that's what we intend to do here.
So you expect to see, as each Closing the Gap report is released each year, there will be measurable improvements once this voice is elected?
We're expecting that once representatives are elected and that the issues of Aboriginal communities are heard within local voices and within the state parliament, that there'll be shifts around the dial of those indicators which tell us Aboriginal communities are falling behind.
And for you personally, moving forward, what's your plan? Do you plan to stick on once the voice is elected, or do you have other political ambitions?
Very good question. So I've been, of course, the leader of the state process now for almost going on 18 months. I'm relieved around the number of nominees. That means it's me plus 113 as it currently stands. When the 46 get elected, they'll form the regional voices and the state voice. Then my role will drop out. I'll be unemployed at that stage, won't I? I'll have to think about what my next move is, and I haven't thought about anything politically. Haven't thought about anything in terms of my next step. My priority has been to get through this work. It's been all-consuming in terms of the detail and the breadth of this work. I'm looking forward to 2 weeks off, and then I'll have to recess myself.
Davies, thank you for your time.
Thank you.
A career-best innings from all-rounder Cameron Green has put Australia in a strong position at stumps on day 2 of the first test against New Zealand in Wellington. Green finished on 174 not out after a record last wicket partnership with Josh Hazlewood before Australia dismissed the Black Caps for a modest 179.
New Zealand will want to get rid of this pair.
New Zealand needed only 1 wicket to wrap up Australia's innings, but that wicket would prove elusive.
Oh, goodness me. Wow.
Number 11, Josh Hazlewood, did his best impersonation of a top-order batter, and Cameron Green showed why selectors promoted him to number 4.
What a way to bring up 150. The first time past that milestone.
The pair combined for 116, Australia's highest ever 10th wicket partnership against New Zealand. Green was unbeaten on 174.
This session has been a disaster for New Zealand. But
there were more calamities to come, with the world's top-ranked batter, Kane Williamson, out for a duck.
Run, got to hurry, he's a mix-up. Well, I cannot believe it. Will Young's looking, can't believe it, and then he takes off, and then, oh no. Bang, bang, they run into one another. Great piece of throwing.
Some could no longer bear to watch as the Black Caps crashed to 5 for 29.
to get out like that, gut-wrencher.
Glenn Phillips made a counter-attacking 71.
Oh, what a shot that is.
Nathan Lyon picked up 4 wickets as the home team was dismissed for 179. Australia chose not to enforce the follow-on, but might have wished it had.
Got him! Yes, he's got one!
Tim Southey soon had 2 as Marnus Labuschagne's run of outs continued. And it could have been even better for the Black Caps, with night watchman Lyon dropped on the last ball of an eventful day. Duncan Huntsdale, ABC News.
The father of Matilda's superstar, Sam Kerr, says she's definitely out of the Paris Olympics in July as she continues to recover from a knee injury. Kerr ruptured an anterior cruciate ligament while in a mid-season training camp with her team Chelsea in Morocco in January. The Matildas qualified for the Paris Olympics after a 10-0 thrashing of Uzbekistan in Melbourne this week. Team management has said Kerr will be medically assessed in April and the decision made on her inclusion then. But Roger Kerr says his daughter is out.
He's in rehab now in Chelsea, and it's a lonely life, rehab. You're by yourself and just plugging away with the rehab things. But she's mentally well, and she's disappointed that she's missed the Olympics, but hopefully she'll be back within 12 months.
On to all the weather details now, and thanks to Libby Broomhead for tonight's photo of a sunset taken at Sellex Beach. It was fine and mostly sunny across Adelaide today, reaching a warm top of 27.8 degrees at 1 o'clock this afternoon after dropping to a low of 15 overnight. Further afield, a southerly flow brought mild and dry conditions across much of the state today, but it remained very hot in the far north, with 41 degrees in Oodnadatta and 29 in Whyalla. Areas of cloud in troughs over WA, western and southern parts of our state and inland New South Wales will continue to bring showers and storms, while cloud across the northern tropics in humid, unstable winds should also cause heavy rain and storms to increase across the NT and far north Queensland. Hot, sunny and 33 degrees for Brisbane tomorrow, a few showers and 21 in Melbourne and a top of 20 for Hobart. Back home, there'll be isolated showers and thunderstorms across the pastorals and west coast tomorrow, clearing by the end of the day. 38 degrees for Roxby Downs and 34 for Woomera. Mostly dry and sunny further south, 26 degrees for Maitland and 27 in Keith. There's a severe thunderstorm warning for heavy rainfall for the West Coast District, while a strong wind warning continues for the Spencer Gulf and a flood warning remains for the Warburton and Diamantina rivers. Warm and partly cloudy around Adelaide tomorrow, a top of 28 degrees in the city after a low of 15. On the waters, southeasterly winds to 15 knots, tending southwesterly in the afternoon and increasing to 20 knots, with seas to 1.5 metres. The sun will rise at around 7 o'clock and set about 5 to 8. Remaining fine and dry for the week ahead, with tops in the mid to high 20s, some possible showers on Wednesday and a warm and sunny top of 31 for this time next week. And that is the news this Friday. From all the team here, enjoy the rest of your evening and hope to see you tomorrow. Good night.